The Big Build-Up Show, in association with Betfair.
Well, Christmas, of course, is a busy time for all sports, not least in horse racing. And while most of us are tucking into the turkey and ham and kicking back, it's the jockeys, trainers and owners in the UK and Ireland who have a particular interest at this time of year, with plenty of big races run over the Christmas period. I'm Conor Morris, and for the next half hour or so here on the Big Build-Up Show on independent.ie in association with Betfair, I'm going to be looking ahead to the festive racing fixtures. I'll be getting some racing insights and betting tips to help you enjoy it as well. Gary O'Brien, Racing TV's Ireland presenter, is with us. Ryan McElligott, racing columnist with the Irish Field, and Betfair's Darren Hughes. Gentlemen, you're all very welcome to the programme. And I think it's only right, Gary, before we go into the main races across this Christmas and New Year period, we should mention that it is going to be a unique and a very strange year, as it is with all sports. Crowds are going to be missed, and of course, that's particularly relevant to horse racing, I think, because that festive atmosphere is something that's often talked about. I know from a personal point of view, I've been at Leopardstown and St. Stephen's Day a couple of times, and it's a special place. It's going to be very different.
Without a doubt, Conor, yes. And obviously I've experienced it firsthand for the last 6 months or so, since racing resumed in June. And it's a very, very different atmosphere to what we're used to. And I think the people who do go racing and work there on a regular basis, that's the thing everybody misses, the interaction with people, the crowds, the characters you meet. And Leopardstown at Christmas is one place in particular where you meet a lot of faces that you don't see perhaps, all year round at the races. People who like to go over the festive period, whether it's for 1 day or 2 days or whatever, meet up with old friends. There's a lot of people, obviously expats, who tend to come home for Christmas as well, might try and squeeze in a day or two as well. That all adds to the festive vibe at Leopardstown, and it's going to be a big miss this year, there's no doubt about it, unfortunately.
It'll be a battle, Ryan, for the remote control in the front row of the sofa across the households around the country to try and still kind of invest in what little atmosphere they can. But it's all about the racing at the end of the day, and they certainly won't miss much.
No, it's true. I mean, the racing in Leopardstown, it is going to be top class, but, an integral part of that is the people who are there and the atmosphere and kind of the sense of occasion that the whole 4 days brings with it. So from that point of view, it'll be a fairly kind of Spartan edition of the Christmas festival. But I think we do at least have some top class racing to look forward to, which is something at least,
Absolutely. We'll get into that very, very shortly indeed. Darren, good to talk to you. No doubt the Christmas period, of course, absolutely crucial for the bookmakers and the exchanges. How does this compare, out of interest, to the other big times of the year, the Cheltenhams and Ascots and the entries and so on?
That's massive, of course, Conor. I mean, look, Cheltenham is its own beast. I mean, there's no real comparison to that particular week. But Christmas racing, everyone seems to have an opinion when it comes to Christmas racing, be it an educated one or one for fun. You know what I mean? Everyone seems to get involved. So it's an enormous period for us. We're just delighted to have racing allowed to go ahead in these difficult times. So looking forward to an exciting Christmas, even though it'll be a little bit strange not to be on the track for once.
Gary, how do you think racing has been coping, if you can cope without the crowds? I mean, obviously it's a loss of a massive revenue stream, but it's so much more than that because it's such an educated punter audience trackside and people really invest in the sport. And how do you think horse racing has coped?
Probably the answer, Conor, is as best as they can. It's far from ideal, as you've outlined there, that revenue from people like bookmakers on track are obviously missing out. A lot of people who would ordinarily be at the races aren't able to go. I think everybody in the industry feels quite lucky that racing has been able to go ahead since it started back in June. Other sports haven't been as fortunate at times, and it is a big industry, and I think the government has recognised that as well. And there's been a lot of protocols put in place to ensure that things run smoothly. The IHRB medical team have done a great job on that score as well. There's a lot of things anybody who's going to the races on a given day has to do beforehand to make sure that all the checks are in order. So it's far from ideal, as I said earlier on, Conor. It's a very, very sterile atmosphere at the races itself. We're obviously hoping that from a TV point of view, we can bring across the excitement that the horses themselves are going to generate at Leopardstown, because as the lads have alluded to there are a lot of big names going to be on show.
I suppose, is there any sense, Ryan, that carries across even anecdotally to jockeys and trainers and connections of horses? I know they're all very much invested in their sport, and once it comes to race day, like most sports, it's silts on, you're in the weighing room and you get on with the job. But you think of the roar coming around that final bend and up the hill, and it's bound to have some kind of impact.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as Gary alluded to, I mean, it is, the atmosphere is a sterile one, and to the point where I think there have been a few races lately where jockeys who've been out on the track have been able to hear connections kind of cheering them home, which must be a rather eerie sort of feeling. It's like with any sport, I think the crowd are key participants in it too, because they generate the atmosphere which makes these occasions so special.
There are actually, Conor, sorry to interrupt, there are actually, I suppose, horses who are better off maybe without a crowd being there. We're actually going to talk about one of them later on, who I think could have a major say in one of the races. Horses who tend to get wound up by a noisy, buzzy atmosphere, and they might be the ones to actually benefit from this situation. I think it's actually happened with one or two of them already.
And Gary, just before we move on, then the battle for the Trainers' Championship, of course, between Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott, that's in some sense the overarching theme around this Christmas period. And with the big prize money on offer, how do you think that's going to go and bring us up to speed on the current standings?
Yes, it's an ongoing theme really in the jump season over the last few years. It's become a real battle between Elliott and Mullins, and as we know, Mullins has had the upper hand up to now. Elliott's ahead again this year by several 100,000, Conor. In Leopardstown, for all the prize money's been reduced this year because of the pandemic, there's still huge prize money on offer at Leopardstown, 6-figure purses for several races there. So I've gone through the entries in detail, and it looks a level enough playing field. Both of them are strong in kind of different areas, if you like, and there are several races where they'll both be strongly represented numerically, and they're going to be trying to not just mop up the winners' share of the prize fund, but hopefully the second, third, and maybe even the fourth as well, because there's good prize money that goes right the way down in some of those races. So I'm not exactly sure who's going to have the upper hand over the Christmas period, but Gordon Elliott, nothing new from at this stage of the season anyway, Conor. He's in a better position. I think he's possibly taking a longer term view this season than he has done in the past. He's run out of ammunition around Punchestown at the festival in the spring in previous years. Famously, I think it was 2 years ago when he went in with a nice lead and ended up losing by a big margin. So I think he's trying to maybe play a longer game this year in terms of perhaps running the horses less in the early part of the season.
And Darren, what do the punters feel in that regard in terms of the Trainers' Championship specifically?
Yeah, I mean, look, it seems to happen every single year that Gordon goes into the Punchestown time of year with the lead, and Willie just seems to erode it. It's Willie is the current favourite. He's 1-3, and Gordon, obviously sponsored by Betfair, he's one of our ambassadors, at 7-4, and Henry Drama then the outsider at 3 at 20-1. It would look to be very much a 2-horse race. As Gary alluded to there, Gordon does seem to be taking more of a longer view this year with some of his. I mean, Envo Allen could surely pick up a race at Christmas time, but he's being put away for a run at the Dublin Racing Festival later on in the season, with a view maybe to keep them fresher for Cheltenham and then on to Punchestown after that. So very interesting to see how it goes down to the line. Gordon has some incredible animals this year to go to war with, as he always has, but this year he just seems to be particularly strong. So I would say those prices are probably fair enough. I wouldn't put anyone off taking 7-4 about Gordon.
And we'll probably talk about some of those Gordon Elliott entries as we go through the various race cards. I want to start, guys, if it's okay with you, with Kempton. And I suppose the question, will it be a 12th King George for Paul Nicholls this year and a third in a row for Clan Des Obeaux, who, he won it going away by 20 lengths from a stablemate last year. Gary, what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I think this seems to be his race, if you like, Conor. He's proven, I think, at this stage that he's not really a Cheltenham Gold Cup horse. And I think Paul Nicholls has probably framed his entire season around this race. Now, he did say that he had the horse well tuned up for his first run in the Betfair Chase at Haydock, and he finished second. But I think this is the race that he's basically circled in the calendar. It's his number one priority, and you can understand in that situation why he's as strong and prominent as he is in the betting. But Surname's a fascinating rival for him, I think. He looked so good at Wetherby last time. I think last year in this race, the battle he had with Altior at Ascot previously had taken its toll on him, and he was just a bit flat on the day. And just in the last 24 hours, Conor, we've had Santini put in there, which was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people as well. And I know maybe people feel that this isn't his track, but if you go back to his only other run over fences here at Kempton, he actually on the official figures ran a career best that day. So that's not to say that he can't be competitive either. And That's before even mentioning horses like Lost in Translation and Monolith. So look, Clan Des Obeaux to me is the one to beat. Would I be getting stuck into him at a short price? Probably not, I don't think.
And Ryan, for you, all things considered, and as Gary was alluding to there, the supplementing of the Gold Cup runner-up, Santini, does that change your kind of view of this race overall? Or
yeah, I mean, Santini isn't everybody's cup of tea now, for all that he's a pretty good horse. And he came back in Aintree there. He ran such a terrific race in the Gold Cup last year to finish second, but I thought his comeback effort in Aintree was pretty underwhelming. Like he had the length of the straight, I felt, to get by Lakeview Lad and just couldn't get it done. And this the King George now is going to be a considerably tougher test. I think, as Gary said, he has run a good race at Kempton as a novice chaser, but I wonder, is just the 3 mile 2 of the Gold Cup, which is a real exacting stamina test, is that what's going to bring out the best of them, best in him, as opposed to the King George, which might place more of an emphasis on speed? And for that reason, I think is he about 13-2, and that's about his price. I mean, as I say, I wouldn't be rushing to get stuck into Clan Des Obeaux, although I think he's the most likely winner. I could see there is Henry de Bromhead is a horse in the race, Monolith. Now he was beaten on his comeback run in Thurles by Presenting Percy. He also suffered a heavy defeat last season on his comeback before running really well in Leopardstown, the Saviles Chase. He's a horse who does tend to come on from his first run of the season. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see him run well. He's been knocking on the door in a lot of good races for a long time.
Okay.
Should point out, Conor, sorry, when I say a career best for Santini, I meant at that stage. He's obviously gone on and scaled much greater heights since then, as you say, runner-up in the Gold Cup. And
Monolith, I think, is the only Irish entry at this stage. And Darren, what's the market telling us? And also with a view maybe to the fact that I looked at some of the forecasters in terms of the weather. There's a significant amount of rain they expect over there between Wednesday and Thursday, potential for the soft ground to change and become a little bit more exacting on the horses, which may have an impact.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, look, currently it's Paul Nicholls, Betfair ambassador Paul Nicholls, heads the market with his front two, the big two, Clan Des Obeaux and Surname, who are 7-4 and 15-8 respectively. Santini then in at 6-1, Lost in Translation 7-1, Monolith for Henry de Bromhead 9-1, and then it's 16s and bigger the rest after that. In terms of the weather forecast, and I'm open to correction here, Kempton generally doesn't tend to be too bad with the rain if you compare it to other tracks. Like Sandown isn't a million miles away from it, and that gets quite sticky and gluey when it does rain, whereas Kempton just tends to take the bad weather quite well. I mean, look, I think this does focus pretty much on the top two in the market. There is a race at Christmas for Santini, but I think it's about 100 miles west over a mile further at Chepstow. I don't think it's the King George, to be fully honest. He wouldn't be for me here at all. He had as Ryan alluded to there, he had every chance to go away for that at Aintree and didn't do it. It was a really unlikable performance in my view for all that he is likely to improve. I do think that Monolith could run quite well here. I mean, the way the shape of the race, this could easily break up into under the 8 runners, so you could steal a place here if you backed him each way at 9-1, get your 3 places now, as opposed to if it's 7 runners or less on the day, you'll only get 2. He's likely to be tuned up to the last for this, as Ryan said as well. He's going to come on a bunch for his first run, so we have an interesting race ahead, but I do think the front two in the market have a fair death grip on it. It's going to be quite hard to upset them. Okay, interesting. Well, also at Kempton on Boxing Day, as they like to call it across the way, the champion hurdle winner Epitaunt due to run in the Christmas hurdle, Gary.
Yes, that's right, Conor. It looks as though it'll probably be a bit of a penalty kick for it, but Connections have picked out the route they want to go back to Cheltenham with her this season. It's a nice race for it to go for. The opposition bar Goshen run, so I was a little bit surprised to see him in the entries after bombing out at Cheltenham the other day. Bar him, and he would have to return to something like his best. Obviously, the opposition probably won't be too taxing for her, so it'd be a huge shock if she were to be turned over, Conor. She looked very good when she won first time out this season at Newcastle.
And moving on then, Ryan, to the 27th then at Kempton the following day, the potential for Altior and Put the Kettle on to go head-to-head over a couple of miles in the Desert Orchid Chase.
Yeah, so obviously huge interest surrounding Altior's comeback. It was obviously a somewhat controversial late scratching from the Tingle Creek a few weeks ago, and now he's been rerouted to Kempton. Look, he's done it all before at this trip, at the top level, at this track. Put the Kettle on. She's an interesting mare. You know, she won the Arkle last season. You know, and the logical next step is to progress into a top 2 mile chaser. And she kind of came from left field to win the Arkle, having been running in Kilbeggan, Downpatrick, Tipperary and Wexford, in the months prior to it. And then she took this big jump forward to win the Arkle. Really likeable performance on her comeback in Cheltenham when she toughed it out really well to win in November. Admirable mare, has fitness on her side, could give Altior a race, but it would be a huge shock if Altior was beaten.
Okay, well, maybe we'll move on. Anything else, guys, before we do move on from Kempton that's jumping off the page at us?
No, I would just say, I think, I don't know if the lads might agree, I think rumours of Altior's demise have been greatly exaggerated. I mean, he's yet to run a bad race over fences. I mean, that run against Darren last year where he got turned over, I think was one of his better runs of his career, and he obviously went on to Newbury then and won. I think he's going to be very, very difficult to beat this season, and even when he goes into better company, say your Cheltenham's, etc., he's about the 7-1 mark for the champion chase this year, and I think that's plenty fair enough. There's a lot of them that have to come up to his level as yet. Okay, well, let's look at Leopardstown on St. Stephen's Day, mainly, of course, revolving around the Grade 1 Racing Post Novices Chase. 13 entries with, obviously, as you'd expect, the Mullins and Elliott yards very well represented. Ryan, kick us off on that one.
Yeah, so we've got Willie has a number of candidates to choose from here, including Asterion Forlange, who was a Grade 1 winning novice hurdler last season. I just had a glance at the betting, whatever that means at this stage, just before coming on, and I think his Energumene, who was a very impressive winner of the Gorn Beginner's Chase. He's the shortest price to his in the betting, and he's a horse who he's yet to prove himself at graded level, because he's just won a bumper, won a maiden hurdle, won a beginner's chase, likely race so far. Horse of huge potential, very impressive in Gorn. Now he would have to drop back in trip by half a mile in Leopardstown, and he is going to be taking on Felix Deschi, who's a horse of Gordon's, who has won at Grade 1 level as a hurdler, and he used to be a bit of a tearaway. Now his run when he won last time in Punchestown, he actually was content to take a lead for a lot of the race, dropped back to 5th at one stage, and then actually came with a strong run from the turn in to win and beat a good horse suggested in Size and Potsy. So it suggested that maybe tactically Felix Deschi's become a little more versatile. But this is another step up, and I'd be quite wary of whatever Willie runs. As I say, he has Energumene, and there's a JP McManus horse, Janadil, who's a 12-1 shot. Well, he was 12-1 when I looked earlier, who won very nicely at Naas on his first start over fence. It was a really good novice hurdler, and I suspect he will be equally as good over fences. So, tricky race to call now.
Gary, would you find this equally tricky to call? What's your thoughts?
I think Ryan's hit the nail on the head there, Conor, from this remove at least until you see the final declarations, because Willie Mullins has to whittle down his team, whether it be Energumene, Franca de Port, Blackbow, Janadil. The two of his that I'd be most interested in would be Energumene and Janadil. But listening to Ruby Walsh yesterday, and the ground at Leopardstown, which is something we didn't really touch on, it seems to be quite dry on the chase track, which can happen at this time of the year. They're even talking about having to put a bit of water on it. So Energumene might be an unlikely runner unless there is a lot of water/rain in the period running up to the race. So maybe Janadil, if he turns up, I was quite impressed by him when he won at Naas. And I think he might be a more talented horse than the likes of Franca de Port and Blackbow, even though he doesn't maybe have the high profile of those. Felix Daisy, you can't really knock what he's done over fences so far, but I just have a little nagging doubt in my mind about him on the big occasion over fences. And if he goes and wins here, well, I think that might be that quashed.
Yeah, Darren, how do you see it? Darva Star hasn't got a mention yet for Gavin Cromwell, third behind Felix Deshay at Punchestown not so long ago. It's a pretty open market for this one, is it?
It's tight enough at the top, and Energumene is 11-8, and Felix Deschi then is 6-4. That they very much dominate the market. Darva Star then is in at 4-1, and Franca de Port 13-2, Blackbow 7s, and Envo Allen is in there at 7s, though he's an unlikely runner. Look, as the two lads said there, you're taking your life into your hands having bet in this race before you see the final declarations. There's a couple that could go to a couple of different places. I mean, Asterion Forlange is in here. I'd say he's much more likely to go to Limerick. A right-handed track would suit him much better than Leopardstown, where he just won't get away with his jumping blemishes. I was very taken with Energumene down in Gorham Park, and the clock backed up that performance. It was exceptional, to be fully honest. I suppose the concern with him is his fragility. He's only been seen 4 times. He won his point nearly 3 years ago this January, and he's only run 4 times since, and that's obviously always going to be a concern. As Gary said there, fast ground over the Christmas period, which is an unusual thing to say, but if we do get it, he's probably not the most likely runner. There is just one thing I would say, is that the two horses at the top of the market, Energumen and Felix Deji, both like to get on with things. And if they were to cut each other's throats by by going off a bit too hard, Derby Star certainly could pick them off. Now, I haven't been as convinced with him over fences as I was over hurdles, and I do just wonder. I was only saying it to one that I said the other day, might they drop him back to hurdles and pick up some place money? And he's certainly one of the better 2 mile hurdlers in Ireland, and he's obviously shown he can be competitive over in Cheltenham, finishing very well in the Cheltenham Hurdle last year. So if this doesn't work out from this Christmas, I wouldn't be shocked to see him back over the smaller obstacles.
Okay, interesting. As Darren mentioned there, Limerick on Saturday, St. Stephen's Day. Ryan, just a quick mention, pencil full of lead taking on the Willie Mullins contingent in the novices chase there.
Yeah, actually, again, Willie has fairly similar personnel in this race to the race we've just discussed in Leopardstown. So again, a bit of a guessing game as to what's going to turn up. As Darren said, it would look a really good race for a steering for Lange. But Pencil Full of Lead is a fascinating horse because he was a terrible jumper of hurdles. But Gordon always maintained he would be a much better chaser. And in fairness to him, he's hardly put a foot wrong in 2 runs over fences. He won a beginner's race in Galway in late October quite nicely. And then he won a Grade 2 in Punchestown quite impressively, beating latest exhibition, who was a top novice hurdler last season. The key thing here is in Punchestown, he absolutely revelled on testing ground. And Limerick at Christmas produces its own sort of testing ground. Like, it can get really, really deep there. And while he's dropping back a little bit in trip, he will love the ground, I'd say, and he might just be the one they all have to beat now.
Okay, well, I think we'll move it on, Gary, to Leopardstown the following day, the 27th. A couple of Grade 1s to give mention to, and in the rewards chase, I suppose we're looking at whether or not Notebook can challenge the established 2 milers, most notably Chacun Poursuit, I suppose, would be the one to mention there.
That's it, Conor. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how short Chacun Poursuit is. Darren will tell us now in a second, I'm sure, but he'll be odds on for this. And I actually do think there's a good chance Notebook can beat him. Notebook's only ever been beaten once over fences himself. It was one of those days at Cheltenham where just everything went wrong for him. He is quite a headstrong horse, and he got a bit wound up before the race, and it was a full start. He didn't get the position Rachel Blackmore was looking for when they got away the second time. So I can quite happily draw a line through that. I was pleased to see him win on his seasonal debut at Naas. And he was the horse I was really thinking about, Conor, when I was talking at the top of the show about horses benefiting from a lack of crowds. He is a bit of a handful. I think at Leopardstown last season, I can't remember, was it at Christmas or in the Arkle at the Dublin Racing Festival, he almost went off in the wrong direction when he went out onto the track, and Rachel Blackmore had to really wrestle him to get him down to the start, and then he still won the race, which I was immensely impressed by. I just think in terms of raw ability, this horse has got an awful lot of talent, and if he puts it all together in the day, which I think he's in a position to do now after a good launch pad on that seasonal debut, I give him a good chance of beating Chacun Poursuit. I think he's probably going to be a fair enough price to do so as well. The one potential fly in the ointment, and again the final declarations will clarify this, is whether Min will pitch up here as well. He did run against Chacun Poursuit once last season. You would have thought it would be unlikely, but just until you see those final declarations, it might be best just to hold fire. Okay, well, Darren, just before we move on, give us a steer on the market there.
Sure thing, yes. So Chacun Poursuit, as Gary alluded to there, he is our 1-3 favourite. Notebook is 4-1. Min is currently trading around a 10-1 shot. Put the Kettle on 12s and Aptly Tired 16s. I think there's the opportunity for some each-way thievery here, to be honest. At the moment, you're getting a fifth of the odds 3 places. Notebook, you go back from each way at 4-1. Min isn't the most likely runner. Put the Kettle on. There's a fair chance she goes to England. Aptly Tired, no guarantee he'll run here. Mellon is unlikely to run here. Sam Crow is unlikely to run here. They're all lower up. They're all lower down the bet, and this could cut up very badly to 4, 5, 6 runners. And if you back them now and take your 3 places on the day, it's highly unlikely. It's almost highly unlikely to see him out in 3 places. But you'd look to be on a pretty good bet there with pretty much a free roll on your win part of your bet.
Yeah, duly noted. I'm always up for a bit of each way thievery at this point. The other Grade 1, by the way, on the 27th, of course, is the Future Champions Novice Hurdle. But let's move it on a little bit because we're getting really stuck in. There's plenty to talk about. December the 28th, the big feature on the penultimate day at Leopardstown is the Saviles Chase. And guys, potentially, I I was reading in a lot of people's book, this could be the race of the week. There's so many good entries in it. Ryan, kick us off on this one, please.
Yeah, I'd say, I think you could safely say at this stage, the only possible race that will exceed this in terms of quality this season will be the Gold Cup, I would say. This is a fantastic race. And there's just so many horses you could start talking about here. You've got Manila Indo for Henry de Bromhead, who was a really good staying novice chaser last season, just got mugged late on in Cheltenham, has come back with two pretty impressive victories at Wexford and Navan, albeit he should have won those races, he did. But, he's a big player now for all the top staying chases. So there's him. Then you've got Presenting Percy, who kind of resurrected himself in Thurles last time, winning very nicely from Kemboy. Then you got Delta Work, who just seems to operate so well around Leopardstown, won this race last year. Now, I would say with Delta Work, I mean, I think Jack Kennedy is quite important to Delta Work. So it'll be interesting to see what Jack chooses, because he's a tricky choice here. There's Presenting Percy. There's also Sam Crow, I think, is likely to turn up here as well. His first time going 3 miles. So like there's many other horses I haven't even mentioned here. Aplu Tard, I think, stepping up to 3 miles. We have, Kemboy is there. This is one hell of a race.
Gary, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, brilliant race, as Ryan has said there, Conor. And I've always had a soft spot for Presenting Percy. I thought he was as an exciting novice chaser over that sort of distance as it's been for a while. I mean, you go back to the form of that win at the Cheltenham Festival as a novice. He slammed Albin Photo, who admittedly fell to out, but was going to be on the wrong end of a heavy defeat. Monley ended up finishing second, and he was just in a different league to them on the day. This is going to tell us, I think, whether he really is back at that sort of level. He obviously had a time in the wilderness. He won at Thurles last time, but there were mitigating circumstances. His two big rivals that day hadn't had a run. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that he is back to the sort of horse that we saw as a novice, because if he is, I think he'll win this and potentially win it well. If he's not, I think Manila Indo is definitely the most likely to capitalise. He's just a rock-solid horse, hugely likeable type, jumps really well. He is quite short. There's no way I'd contemplate back him at around about 2-1, which I think he is at the moment in a race with this depth to it. But he's got tremendous upside, and I'd really be hoping one of those two will perhaps come to the fore here.
Darren, what do you think about this? And lots to talk about in the market here. As Gary said, so many chances. There's got to be a little bit of a wriggle room for punters here.
Absolutely. I'll just give you a quick sprint through the betting here first, Conor. Manila Indo is actually a 7-4 poke in the Betfair Sportsbook at the moment. Presenting Percy 4-1, Delta Work 9-2, Kemboy 6-1, Aplu Tard 7-1, Allaho 8, and it's 10-1 and bigger the rest. Yeah, look, I think Manila Indo is quite short stepping into open company. Like he's won his 2 races in Wexford, and where's the other one in Navan as well. But this is his first time against the big boys in open company, and I do think he's plenty short at 7-4, given that's the case. Like Gary, very interested in Presenting Percy. He's obviously got a massive trainer upgrade this year, having been moved to Betfair ambassador Gordon Elliott, and part of me does just wonder, is it a year too late? If this had happened a year earlier when he was a year younger of a horse, could he really have kicked on and turned into that Grade 1 performer we know he can be? But look, yeah, his comeback run was fine. He obviously went then and won the last time, so he's very interesting. But the one I fell down on was last year's winner, Delta Work, who at this stage we know inside out. We know that he's going to run below himself on his comeback run, which he duly did up and down Royal. But like last year, he went on and won this race last year after a relatively poor comeback, and 9-2 would look more than fair enough for me to do that. For him to do that again this year. Again, he'd look rock solid for the places. Kemboy, I haven't been able to get a handle on. He seems to have kind of gone missing to some extent over the last year and a half. Aplu Tard stepping up to 3 miles for the first time is likely to bring about improvement, but again, the price reflects that at 7-1. So I think the rock solid one there is Delta Work there at 9-2.
Okay, it's going to be a really interesting race. There's a few that we haven't got to, and time is pushing on. December the 29th, we've also got the Matheson Hurdle. Quick mention of that before we mention the Welsh Grand National at Chepstow to finish off, maybe?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the betting here again, Conor. Sire de Burley 7-4, Fury Road 11-4, Ronald Pump from Matchy Smith then is 4-1, and it's 14's the bigger the rest. So it does look like it would focus on the front 3 of the market if they all show up.
Ryan?
So that's the 3 mile hurdle. That's That's a quite interesting. Sire de Burley is a fascinating horse because he's won 2 per temps finals in Cheltenham. Now that's a handicap, and now we're talking about Grade 1 hurdling. But you know, the performance he produced at Cheltenham last year suggests this horse actually might win a stayers hurdle, and I think he probably is a Grade 1 stayer in the making. Wouldn't be shocked at all actually to see him, like, he could easily get beaten here, but I could see him turning around Cheltenham in March and winning the stayers hurdle. You know, it's a tough race to call. If Leopardstown could get quite dry, which would be a worry for Fury Road, but if there was a nice ease in the ground, I could see Fury Road taking a bit of beating on this occasion. I think Gordon has a storyteller in here as well, who's won a Grade 1 over fences last time out, but is just as good over hurdles. He's quite a strong hand here, but maybe a bit of ease in the ground, Fury Road.
Okay, and Gary, give us a quick mention of the Matheson hurdle. Lots of interest in this one, of course, as well.
There is, Conor. The big talking point, I suppose, will be the rematch between St. Raw and Abacadabras. They clashed in the Morgiana hurdle at Punchestown. Abacadabras came out on top. It was a messy race. A lot of people, myself included, felt that St. Raw was a bit unlucky on the day, and I would fancy him to turn it around. But there is a potential fly in the ointment there. Aspire Tower, the 4-year-old, he beat Abacadabras at Down Royal previously and ran very well at the Cheltenham Festival last season after jumping terribly. He did well, I thought, to finish as close as he did. This is going to be the acid test for him to see if he can really cut it at open Grade 1 level. But I'd be optimistic he won't be out of place, I don't think.
Okay, well, absolutely plenty, of course, to look forward to there over the course of the festive racing period. And while you might not be able to get to the race course, as I said at the very top, you've got some great tips and advice there from our 3 experts. My sincere thanks to Gary, to Ryan and to Darren for joining me on the programme. That is all we have time for on this Christmas racing special on the Big Build Up Show. I'm Conor Morris. Have a happy and healthy Christmas. Bye for now.